Sofia Mitchell had always been a ghost in Meadowvale, and that's exactly how she preferred it. The small town nestled like a forgotten teacup in the Vermont mountains, where everyone knew everyone's business except hers. For 8 years, she'd run Wheatfield Bakery from a converted Victorian house on Maple Street, crafting artisanal breads and pastries with hands that moved with the precise certainty of someone who had spent years mastering an entirely different skill set. Every morning before sunrise, locals caught the same heavenly aroma drifting from her kitchen windows, the scent of fresh sourdough and cinnamon rolls that drew customers from 3 counties away. But what they never smelled was the faint trace of cordite that sometimes lingered on her fingers, no matter how thoroughly she washed them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sofia was 38, but her posture and movements betrayed a disciplined physicality that her flour-dusted aprons couldn't quite conceal. Her chestnut hair was typically swept into a practical bun beneath a white baker's cap, and her amber eyes carried a watchfulness that made some customers hesitate before asking for anything beyond their usual order. She wore the same uniform every day, black pants, comfortable shoes that could pivot quickly on hardwood floors, and crisp white button-downs under bakery aprons that were changed twice daily. A thin scar traced her right eyebrow, barely visible, beneath carefully applied makeup, like a signature she couldn't quite erase. The townspeople had theories, of course. Some whispered she was running from a toxic relationship. Others speculated she might be in witness protection. Elderly Mrs. Hargrove at the library swore Sofia had the bearing of military or law enforcement. You can't hide that kind of training. But Sofia answered only what needed answering, deflecting personal questions with warm smiles and extra pastries, maintaining an invisible barrier between herself and the community that said, "This far and no further." What none of them knew was what lay hidden in the converted root cellar beneath her bakery, accessed through a pantry door disguised as shelving. Inside that underground space, which appeared on no building plans filed with the town, was a climate-controlled room containing specialized equipment that would baffle most bakers. Sophisticated communications devices, 3 different passports in 3 different names, a gun safe with modifications no civilian should possess, and most telling of all, a trunk containing a specialized uniform unlike anything sold in stores, with patches removed but thread marks still visible where insignia had once been sewn. The uniform bore no name, no rank, no unit designation, but stamped on the inside collar in faded ink was a single word: Persephone. Every Sunday night, when the bakery was closed and the town settled into its weekend quiet, Sofia would descend to that hidden room. She would open the trunk, run her fingers across the fabric of her former life, and check the secure communications channel that had remained silent for 8 years. In those moments, she wasn't Sofia Mitchell the baker. She was someone else entirely, someone who had officially ceased to exist. On this particular Monday, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, not just weather but something that would shatter the careful life she'd built. Sofia was elbow-deep in bread dough, working the starter into a new batch of her famous sourdough, when she heard the distinctive sound of a vehicle with government plates pulling into her rear parking area. Not a local sheriff's cruiser. This had the distinctive hum of armored SUVs with specialized suspension. She recognized the sound immediately, and her blood ran cold. Sofia calmly washed the dough from her hands, dried them on her apron, and moved to the security panel disguised as a vintage recipe holder. The exterior cameras showed 2 black government vehicles, Suburbans with diplomatic plates, and 4 individuals exiting in formation. The visitors wore civilian clothes but moved with the synchronized precision of people accustomed to working as a tactical unit. Leading them was a woman in her mid-40s, silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing a charcoal pantsuit that did nothing to disguise her military bearing. Colonel Catherine Hayes. Sofia hadn't seen her in 8 years. Not since the day she'd been declared officially dead and given a new identity. Hayes had been her handler, her recruiter, the woman who had transformed a talented but directionless young army chef into something else entirely. If Hayes was here in person, this wasn't a courtesy call. Sofia took a deep breath, straightening her spine and squaring her shoulders unconsciously. She quickly pinned her hair back more securely, a habit from her former life when even a strand of hair out of place could compromise everything. Then she removed her flower-covered apron, revealing the pristine white shirt underneath. The bell above her door chimed as her visitors entered. "We're closed for a private event," Sofia called out, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "I think you can make an exception for us," Hayes replied, scanning the bakery with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Hello, Persephone. It's been a while." The code name hit Sofia like a physical blow, but her expression betrayed nothing. 8 years of carefully constructed identity threatened to dissolve with that single word. "I think you have the wrong baker," Sofia said, maintaining eye contact with Hayes while mentally calculating the distance to her emergency exit and the secure room below. "My name is Sofia Mitchell. I don't know anyone called Persephone." Hayes smiled thinly, gesturing to her team to secure the perimeter of the building. One agent locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. Another began a methodical sweep for surveillance devices or listening equipment. "Let's not waste time, Sofia. Or should I say Captain Sofia Nicolaides, Culinary Specialist Grade 4, recruited to Special Activities Division, Culinary Operations Branch." Hayes approached the counter, setting a manila folder on the marble surface. "We need to talk." Sofia's jaw tightened imperceptibly. 8 years of hiding, of careful cover story maintenance, of becoming someone new, all undone in seconds. She'd known this day might come, but had hoped it never would. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "This is private property," she said, stepping back from the counter. "You don't have jurisdiction here." Hayes reached into her jacket, producing an official-looking document. "National Security Authorization under Executive Order 13,825. We have jurisdiction everywhere when it concerns former Artemis program operatives." One of Hayes' agents approached, carrying a handheld scanner that emitted a soft whirring sound. As he moved it along the baseboards and walls of the bakery, the device pinged repeatedly near the pantry door that concealed the entrance to Sofia's hidden room. "Interesting remodeling choices," Hayes commented dryly. "Secret rooms weren't part of the original Victorian architecture, I'm guessing." Sofia remained silent, watching as the agent continued his scan. The device pinged again, this time near the vintage mixer that concealed a biometric safe. The agent looked at Hayes and nodded once. "The thing about deep cover, Persephone," Hayes sighed, "is that even the best operatives keep certain habits, patterns that are invisible to civilians but stand out like beacons to people who know what to look for." She gestured around the bakery. "This entire layout is a tactical design. 2 exits from every room. Clear sight lines to all entry points. Your display cases are positioned to use as cover in case of frontal assault. Even your apartment upstairs has a reinforced panic room disguised as a closet." Sofia felt the familiar weight of being hunted, the same feeling that had driven her to disappear 8 years ago after the mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. But this time was different. This time she had something to protect. Not just her identity, but the life she'd painstakingly built in this quiet Vermont town. "What do you want?" she finally asked, dropping the pretense, but maintaining her vigilance. Hayes nodded to one of her agents, who opened a secure laptop and turned it to face Sofia. On the screen was a photograph of a man Sofia had hoped never to see again, General Marcus Blackwood, former commander of the Artemis program. Our mutual friend has resurfaced, Hayes said, watching Sofia's reaction carefully. 3 days ago, he made contact with individuals associated with foreign intelligence services. We have reason to believe he's selling operational details about Artemis and its operatives. Sofia's expression hardened. Blackwood had been the one to betray her team 8 years ago, sending them into an ambush that should have killed them. She'd barely escaped with her life, and in the aftermath, she'd been given a choice, a new identity or a military tribunal. She'd chosen disappearance. That's your problem, not mine, Sofia said. I died 8 years ago, remember? Official record says I was killed in a training accident in Nevada. The problem, Hayes replied, is that Blackwood knows you're alive. And he's systematically hunting down every surviving Artemis operative. She tapped the laptop, bringing up a series of photographs, personnel files with red deceased stamps across them, faces Sofia recognized. People she had trained with, worked alongside, trusted with her life. Cooper, Mitchell, Rodriguez, Patel. Hayes listed off names as she scrolled through the images. All dead in the past 6 months. Accidents, suicides, or simply disappeared. All former Artemis operatives. Sofia felt a chill settle in her bones as she recognized her former teammates, people she'd once considered family. How many? She asked quietly. 7 confirmed, Hayes replied. 3 more missing and presumed dead. Why come to me now? Sofia asked, though she already suspected the answer. Hayes closed the laptop. Because you're the only one with the skills to stop him. More specifically, you're the only one who can get close enough. I'm a baker now, Sofia said, gesturing to her flour-dusted workspace. I make sourdough and cinnamon rolls. I cater weddings. I don't do that anymore. Hayes smiled thinly. The thing about skills like yours, Persephone, is that they don't fade. They just wait beneath the surface. She nodded to one of her agents, who produced another file. 3 days from now, Blackwood is hosting a private dinner for potential buyers of his information. High-level officials from countries that don't particularly like the United States. The dinner requires a specialized chef with security clearance. Sofia understood immediately. You want me to poison them? I thought. We didn't do that anymore. Not poison, Hayes corrected. Infiltrate. Get close, gather intelligence, identify the buyers. We need to know exactly what Blackwood is selling and to whom. Send someone else, Sofia said. You must have a dozen active operatives who could handle this. We tried, Hayes replied. Blackwood knows all current personnel. But you he believes is dead. And more importantly, you have the perfect cover. You really are a world-class chef. Your culinary credentials are impeccable and completely verifiable. Sofia turned away, looking around the bakery she'd built from nothing, the home she'd created for herself. I can't just walk away from my life here. You won't have to, Hayes said. 1 mission, 3 days. You go in, gather intel, get out. Then you return to your quiet life making pastries in Vermont. And if I refuse, Hayes's expression hardened, then we can't protect you when Blackwood eventually tracks you down. And he will find you, Sofia. He's already found 7 others. Behind Hayes, through the bakery's front windows, Sofia noticed a young man passing by for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Brown jacket, baseball cap pulled low, hands in pockets. Not a local, and definitely surveilling the building. Her eyes flicked to the reflection in the polished espresso machine, catching another unfamiliar figure positioned across the street. Blackwood's people were already here. How long do I have to decide? Sofia asked, though she already knew. Her options were rapidly diminishing. I think we both know you're already out of time, Hayes replied, following Sofia's gaze to the window. She nodded to her team, who immediately moved into defensive positions. My team can secure this location temporarily, but Blackwood's network is extensive. Even we can't protect you indefinitely. Sofia's mind raced through scenarios, calculating risks and options with the precision that had once made her one of Artemis's most valuable operatives. The quiet life she'd built was already compromised. If she refused Hayes, Blackwood's people would eventually get to her. If she accepted, at least she had a chance to end this once and for all. What exactly would I need to do? She asked, her voice taking on the crisp, professional tone she hadn't used in 8 years. Hayes nodded to one of her agents, who opened a briefcase containing a secure tablet. Blackwood is hosting the dinner at his private estate in Maryland. We've arranged for you to be recommended as the chef through legitimate channels. Your reputation in the culinary world makes you a natural choice. My real name isn't on any of my culinary credentials, Sofia pointed out. Sofia Mitchell graduated from Le Cordon Bleu, not Sophia Nicolaides. We've taken care of that, Hayes replied. As far as anyone is concerned, Sofia Mitchell is your professional name, but all your legal documentation matches your original identity. The story is that you changed your name for professional reasons after leaving the military. Sofia processed this information, recognizing the thoroughness of the plan. It was classic Hayes, meticulous, comprehensive, leaving nothing to chance. What about my bakery? I can't just close without notice. We've prepared a cover story. Family emergency requiring your immediate attention. We have someone who can manage basic operations while you're gone. Not your quality, of course, but enough to keep the business running. Sofia moved to the window, watching as more unfamiliar vehicles appeared on her normally quiet street. Blackwood wasn't wasting any time. Her options were rapidly dwindling. If I do this, she said finally, I want guarantees. When it's over, I return to my life. Here. Complete separation from Artemis, from you, from all of it. And protection, not just for me, but for this town. These people don't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of something they know nothing about. Hayes hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. One mission, then you're out for good. Sofia took a deep breath, feeling a familiar calm settle over her, the calm that preceded operations, when objectives were clear and the path forward, however dangerous, was defined. I'll need access to my equipment. Already arranged, Hayes replied. Everything you'll need will be waiting at the staging area. Sofia nodded once, decision made. I need 30 minutes to secure the bakery and pack essentials. You have 15, Hayes countered. Blackwood's surveillance team is already moving into position. As Hayes and her team prepared to escort Sofia out, she took one last look around the bakery she'd built with such care. The copper mixing bowls hanging from a rack above the island. The antique display cases filled with the morning's pastries. The worn wooden spoons that felt like extensions of her hands. For 8 years this had been her sanctuary, her redemption, her attempt at a normal life. But as she descended to her hidden room to retrieve the items she'd hoped never to use again, Sofia Mitchell began to fade away. With each step, each breath, each deliberate movement, Sofia Persephone Nicolaides emerged from dormancy. The operative who had once been the Artemis program's most lethal asset, disguised as a military chef. In the concealed room, she quickly entered the biometric sequence that unlocked her emergency cache. Inside were documents, weapons, and the specialized equipment she'd maintained meticulously, despite hoping never to need it again. At the bottom of the trunk lay her old uniform, tactical gear designed for someone who moved through high-security environments unnoticed. She ran her fingers across the material, feeling the weight of her past pressing down on her present. Sofia changed quickly, muscle memory guiding her through the process of becoming someone she'd tried so hard to leave behind. As she zipped up the tactical jacket, she caught her reflection in the polished metal of her safe. The woman looking back wasn't the friendly baker who exchanged pleasantries with neighbors and created wedding cakes for local couples. She was Persephone, focused, dangerous, and calculating. Upstairs, Hayes was coordinating with her team, establishing a secure exit route through the service alley behind the bakery. Outside, more of Blackwood's surveillance operatives had appeared, tightening the net around her sanctuary. "Ready?" Hayes asked as Sofia emerged from the hidden room, now carrying a small go bag containing only essential items. Sofia nodded once, her expression unreadable. "Let's finish this." As they moved toward the rear exit, Sofia paused at her workstation. The sourdough she'd been kneading still sat on the marble counter, half-formed and waiting. She pressed her hand into it one last time, a silent goodbye to the life she'd built and hoped to return to. Then, with the focused determination that had once made her Artemis's most valuable asset, she followed Hayes into the waiting vehicle, the black SUV, pulled away from Wheatfield Bakery, carrying Sofia away from everything she'd built over the past 8 years. As they drove past the town square, she watched the familiar landmarks slide by, Mrs. Hargrove walking her poodle, the high school cross-country team jogging in formation, old Mr. Peterson sweeping the sidewalk in front of his hardware store. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in their midst had lived someone trained to move through the world's most dangerous places undetected. "Surveillance team is maintaining distance," one of Hayes' agents reported from the passenger seat. "4 vehicles, standard pattern. Let them follow," Hayes replied. "It confirms our intel that Blackwood already had eyes on Persephone. Better to know we're being watched than to be caught by surprise." Sofia remained silent, watching the Vermont landscape roll by as they headed toward the interstate. The familiar mountains that had sheltered her for 8 years grew smaller in the rearview mirror. Ahead lay a mission she never wanted, a confrontation with the man who had betrayed her team and a past she'd tried desperately to bury. As they crossed the state line, Sofia felt the final vestiges of her baker identity slip away. Sofia Persephone Nicolaides was back in the field, heading toward a confrontation that would either end the threat to her life once and for all, or confirm that she should never have survived the ambush 8 years ago. The Pentagon briefing room was sterile and intimidating, designed to reinforce the gravity of classified operations. Sofia sat at the polished conference table, now dressed in civilian business attire that could pass in high-end settings. Around her sat a team of analysts, tacticians, and intelligence officers, the invisible machinery that supported covert operations. Director Marshall Phillips, head of the Special Activities Division, stood at the head of the table. At 62, he moved with the careful precision of someone whose body had endured more than its share of operational wear. His silver hair was cropped close to his scalp, and his piercing blue eyes missed nothing. "Captain Nicolaides," he began, acknowledging her former rank, "welcome back to the land of the living." "It's just Sofia now," she replied evenly. "And this is temporary." Phillips nodded, gesturing to the screens that dominated the wall behind him. "Let's get to it then. Operation Kitchen Knife. Objective: infiltrate General Marcus Blackwood's estate as the chef for his private dinner. Identify his buyers, confirm what intelligence is being sold, and extract without detection." The screens illuminated with detailed floor plans of Blackwood's Maryland estate, a sprawling compound with security that rivaled some foreign embassies. Satellite imagery showed guard rotations, camera positions, and access points. Sofia studied the layout, mentally noting escape routes and potential blind spots. "Blackwood's dinner takes place in 48 hours, Phillips continued. 6 confirmed guests, all representing foreign intelligence services with significant resources. Chinese MSS, Russian SVR, Iranian MUOA, and 3 others were still confirming. This isn't just a security breach, it's potentially the largest intelligence auction in decades." "What exactly is he selling?" Sofia asked, her eyes still scanning the tactical displays. Hayes stepped forward, activating a secure tablet. Everything. Operational procedures, agent identities, mission parameters, but most critically, the complete Artemis program files. Sofia felt her blood run cold. The Artemis program had been the military's most classified culinary operation. Chefs with combat training who could access high-security locations under the perfect cover of food service. They prepared meals for presidents, prime ministers, and dictators alike, gathering intelligence and occasionally delivering more than just dinner. If those files became public, dozens of current and former operatives would be compromised. Blackwood was the program director, Sofia said. He has access to everything. Training protocols, mission reports, personnel files. If those get into foreign hands, every surviving Artemis operative becomes a target, Phillips finished, including you. Sofia turned to Hayes. You said 7 are already dead. How many are left? 3, including you, Hayes replied. Commander David Chun is currently deep undercover in Southeast Asia. We can't extract him without compromising his mission. Lieutenant James Farrow is in protective custody after an attempt on his life last month. That makes me the only available option, Sofia concluded. Precisely, Phillips confirmed. And you have the most important qualification. Blackwood believes you died in the Karachi incident. The Karachi incident. Sofia had spent 8 years trying to forget that night. The mission that went catastrophically wrong, the ambush. That had clearly been an inside job, the 3 teammates who didn't make it out. She'd been reported killed in action, giving her the perfect opportunity to disappear into civilian life. Now that same incident might give her the element of surprise against the man who had orchestrated it. We've established your cover, Hayes explained, sliding a dossier across the table. Sofia Mitchell, award-winning chef specializing in molecular gastronomy and international cuisine. Former military cook who leveraged her skills into a prestigious culinary career. Blackwood's staff has already vetted your credentials and confirmed you're booking through a legitimate agency that places executive chefs for high-profile events. Sofia opened the file, reviewing the carefully constructed background that blended her real culinary accomplishments with her cover identity. What's my objective once I'm inside? Primary mission is intelligence gathering, Phillips said. Identify the buyers, confirm what Blackwood is selling, and plant surveillance devices in key locations throughout the estate. Secondary objective is to secure digital evidence of the transaction, banking details, file transfers, anything that proves treason. Extraction plan? Sofia asked, the old operational protocols coming back with unsettling ease. You complete the dinner service, leave normally with staff, and are extracted at a secure location 5 miles from the estate, Hayes explained. We'll have a tactical team on standby if things go sideways, but our preference is a clean in and out operation with Blackwood never knowing you were anything but the chef. Sofia closed the dossier, considering the risks. And after this mission is complete, I return to my bakery and my life? No more surprise visits, no more operations? Phillips and Hayes exchanged a glance that lasted a fraction of a second too long. There's something you're not telling me, Sofia said, her tone hardening. Phillips sighed, nodding to an analyst who brought up a new set of images on the screen. We have reason to believe Blackwood's operation goes beyond selling intelligence. The recent deaths of Artemis operatives show a pattern consistent with a specialized strike team. We think he's formed a new unit, codenamed Cerberus, comprised of mercenaries and disavowed special forces operators. He's not just selling our secrets, Hayes added. He's actively hunting down everyone connected to Artemis. And based on the timeline of eliminations, he's accelerating. Sofia understood the implication immediately. So even if I complete this mission and return to Vermont, I'm still a target. Yes, Phillips admitted. Until Blackwood is neutralized, None of the remaining Artemis operatives are truly safe. Sofia stood up, pacing the length of the conference table. The carefully constructed life she'd built in Meadowvale suddenly seemed fragile, temporary. A dream from which she'd inevitably been forced to wake. 8 years of perfecting bread recipes, of casual conversations with townspeople who knew nothing of her past, of building something normal and good with her hands instead of destroying. All of it threatened by a man she'd once trusted with her life. "I need assurances," she said finally. "Not just for me, but for the town. If Blackwood has been tracking me, he knows about Meadowvale. Those people are innocent." "Already in progress," Hayes replied. "We've established a security perimeter around the town. Protective details are in place for anyone you've had significant contact with. As far as the locals know, they're state troopers responding to reports of a potential organized crime presence in the area." Sofia nodded, momentarily relieved. That at least her adopted community wouldn't pay the price for her past. "What about my bakery?" "Your assistant manager believes you're consulting for a high-profile client," Hayes said. "The story is that you'll be back in a week. We have someone maintaining basic operations, not your quality, of course, but enough to keep the business viable." Sofia returned to her seat, her decision made. Not that she'd ever really had a choice. The moment Blackwood had put her in his crosshairs, her carefully constructed civilian identity had been living on borrowed time. "When do we start?" she asked. Phillips checked his watch. "You have 24 hours for mission prep and equipment familiarization. Then you go in as Sofia Mitchell, executive chef for hire." The preparation facility was located in a nondescript warehouse in Bethesda, Maryland. Inside, behind layers of security that would impress most military installations, was a complete replica of Blackwood's kitchen, constructed from architectural plans and covert surveillance. Every appliance, every countertop, every knife rack matched what Sofia would encounter at the estate. Sofia stood at the center island, her hands moving with practiced precision as she prepared test dishes for the upcoming dinner. 8 years running her own bakery had only sharpened her culinary skills, the same precision and attention to detail that made her an exceptional operative made her an extraordinary chef. "The menu has been approved by Blackwood's staff," said Commander Ellis, the operations coordinator for Kitchen Knife. 6 courses, emphasizing seasonal ingredients with international influences. Blackwood specifically requested your signature molecular gastronomy techniques. Apparently he's a fan of culinary innovation. Sofia nodded, piping a perfect rosette of herb-infused foam onto a plate. He always did appreciate a good show. She carefully positioned microgreens with tweezers, creating an arrangement that was both visually stunning and strategically designed to direct the diner's attention away from the center of the plate, where a surveillance device disguised as an edible garnish would be placed. "The equipment delivery will arrive at 1400 hours tomorrow," Ellis continued. "Standard procedure. You'll accompany your personal tools and ingredients, giving you the opportunity to inspect the kitchen before formal entry." Sofia tested the consistency of a sauce, making a minute adjustment to its thickness. Security protocols at the estate entrance. ID verification, bag search, metal detection, and body scan, Ellis replied. All standard for high-security private residences. Your credentials and equipment have been cleared through legitimate. She opened the trunk containing her old uniform, running her fingers across the material that had once represented her entire identity. Then, beside it, she placed her flour-dusted apron from the day's work, the symbol of the life she had built for herself. 2 uniforms, 2 identities, now finally integrated into one complete person. Sofia Mitchell, baker and former operative, closed the trunk and ascended the stairs back to her bakery. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Bread to bake, community to serve, and occasionally, former colleagues to protect. But for the first time since Karachi, She would face those challenges as her complete self, not running from her past, but incorporating it into the future she continued to create, one perfectly crafted loaf at a time. As dawn broke over Meadowvale. The next morning, Sofia stood at her workbench, hands deep in sourdough starter, feeling the living culture respond to her touch. Through the front windows of her bakery, she watched her town awakening, shopkeepers raising blinds, early morning joggers passing by, the familiar rhythm of small-town life resuming as it had for generations before her arrival and would continue. Long after she had chosen this place, this life, this identity. And now, tested by fire and stronger for the experience, she had proven that Sofia Mitchell was no mere cover story. She was a true expression of the person Sofia Nicolaides had always been capable of becoming, not defined by her skills or her past, but by the choices she made each day to create rather than destroy, to protect rather than harm, to build something meaningful that nourished others. The small-town baker had indeed been hiding a military secret. But the greater secret, the one worth protecting, was that both identities were equally valid, equally true aspects of the remarkable woman who stood in the golden morning light, covered in flour, shaping dough with hands that could both create and defend with exceptional precision. The Pentagon might call her Persephone when they needed her specialized skills. Meadowvale would always know her as Sofia, the baker who made the best sourdough in 3 counties. But in the quiet moments between, she knew herself simply as someone who had found her way home, to a place that existed not on any map, but in the perfect integration of everything she had been and everything she had become. And that was a secret worth keeping. Her equipment cases were searched methodically, each knife and specialized tool inspected before being cleared. Sofia maintained the slightly impatient, slightly superior demeanor of a top-tier chef whose tools were being manhandled by people who couldn't appreciate their value, a perfect cover that explained any tension in her bearing. "Chef's knives are personal equipment," she said with practiced professional irritation when a guard handled her sentoku blade carelessly. "They're balanced specifically for my grip. Please be careful." The minor confrontation served its purpose, establishing her as exactly the kind of demanding culinary professional Blackwood would expect, while distracting from the specialized equipment concealed within her legitimate cooking tools. After clearing security, Sofia was escorted to the main house and through to the expansive kitchen, a chef's dream of professional-grade appliances, imported marble countertops, and custom cabinetry. Her 3 assistants, all legitimate culinary professionals who knew nothing of the operation's true nature, were already at work prepping ingredients according to her detailed instructions sent ahead. "Chef Mitchell," the house manager greeted her, a thin man with the precise diction of someone who managed elite households. "Everything has been arranged according to your specifications. The ingredients you requested have been delivered and inspected. General Blackwood has approved your menu and is particularly looking forward to your molecular gastronomy creations." Sofia nodded professionally, already surveying the kitchen with a chef's eye and simultaneously mapping camera positions, staff movements, and access points with an operative's awareness. "I'll need 30 minutes to inspect everything and set up my station before we begin final preparations." "Of course," the manager replied. "The general would like to meet you before you get too involved in your work. A formality, he likes to personally welcome key staff for important events." Sofia maintained her neutral expression despite the unexpected development. Meeting Blackwood directly hadn't been part of the initial plan. "I'd be honored, but I do have a strict timeline for preparation. It will only take a moment. He's in his study now." As Sofia followed the manager through the opulent main house, she activated the passive reconnaissance device concealed in her chef's coat button. A tiny camera capturing images of the estate's interior, security positions, and access controls. Every painting she admired, every architectural feature she commented on, provided cover for documenting another aspect of the fortress she had infiltrated. The manager stopped before an imposing wooden door, knocked once, and opened it upon hearing a muffled response from within. "General, Chef Mitchell has arrived." Sofia stepped into a study that perfectly balanced luxury and military precision. Built-in bookshelves housed leather-bound classics alongside tactical manuals. Campaign maps from historical battles hung framed on walls. At a massive desk of polished walnut sat General Marcus Blackwood, still fit at 62, his silver hair cropped in the same military cut he'd worn for decades, his posture ramrod straight, even while seated. "Ah, Chef Mitchell," he said, rising to greet her. "Or should I say, Chef Nicolaides? I understand you use your maiden name professionally." Sofia maintained her composure, showing only the appropriate amount of surprise that a client would know such a personal detail. "Yes, I established my culinary reputation before marriage. After my military service, it seemed simpler to maintain professional continuity." The cover story flowed naturally, a half-truth that explained the name discrepancy while revealing nothing of importance. Blackwood smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. "I always appreciate attention to detail. Your reputation precedes you. Molecular gastronomy combined with classical techniques, an emphasis on local ingredients transformed through science. Rather like intelligence work, wouldn't you say? Taking raw material and transforming it into something more valuable." Sofia recognized the probe for what it was, a test, seeing if she'd react to the intelligence reference. She smiled professionally. "I've never thought of it that way, but I suppose there are similarities. Both require precision and patience." Blackwood studied her face with unsettling intensity. "Your military background is unusual for a chef of your caliber. Most culinary stars come from traditional restaurant apprenticeships. The military taught me discipline and systems thinking." Sofia replied with the practiced ease of someone who had answered this question in legitimate culinary interviews. In a professional kitchen, like in military operations, success depends on precise timing and flawless execution. "Indeed," Blackwood nodded approvingly. "Well, I won't keep you from your preparations. My guests this evening are extremely discerning. Some might even say dangerous if disappointed." His smile took on a predatory quality. "But I'm confident you're equipped to handle any challenging situations that might arise." The double meaning hung in the air between them. Sofia inclined her head slightly. "I've never failed to deliver an exceptional dining experience, General. Tonight will be no exception." As she turned to leave, the study door opened, and a man entered, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face that had once been as familiar to Sofia as her own reflection. Commander Michael Sullivan had aged in the 8 years since she'd last seen him, a new scar along his jawline and strands of gray at his temples, but his movements still carried the same controlled power she remembered. "Ah, Sullivan," Blackwood sighed. "Perfect timing. Meet our chef for this evening's event, Sofia Mitchell." Sullivan's eyes met hers, and for a heart-stopping moment, Sofia wondered if recognition would flicker across his features. She held his gaze with the polite interest of a professional meeting a client's security officer, nothing more. "Chef," Sullivan said, nodding curtly. If he saw anything familiar in her face, he gave no indication. "My team will be monitoring all areas of the house during tonight's event, including the kitchen. Standard procedure for high-security gatherings." "Of course," Sofia replied, her voice betraying none of the complex emotions churning beneath her professional demeanor. "I understand security concerns. My team and I will accommodate whatever measures are necessary." Sullivan's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer, then shifted to Blackwood. "The perimeter is secure, sir. First guests arrive in 3 hours." "Excellent," Blackwood replied. "Chef Mitchell, I'll leave you to your preparations. I look forward to experiencing your artistry this evening." Sofia nodded professionally and followed the house manager back to the kitchen, her mind racing. The encounter confirmed what Hayes had told her. Sullivan was indeed Blackwood's security chief, complicit in whatever the general was planning. More disturbingly, he hadn't shown a flicker of recognition. Either his acting skills had improved dramatically, or he truly didn't recognize the woman who had once been his teammate and friend. Back in the kitchen, Sofia channeled her turbulent emotions into precise action. She inspected each ingredient, tested equipment, and assigned tasks to her assistant chefs with the focused intensity that had earned her a reputation for excellence. Every movement served two purposes: preparing for the evening's culinary performance, while positioning herself to place surveillance devices at key points throughout the kitchen and adjacent service areas. The palladium-crusted sea bass needs to rest at exactly 41 degrees, she instructed one assistant, deliberately using culinary jargon as cover while she placed a microtransmitter beneath the decorative molding above the refrigerator. The molecular foam should be prepared no more than 20 minutes before service. Her hands moved with practiced precision, creating culinary art while simultaneously executing her covert mission. When Sullivan's security team made their expected sweep of the kitchen an hour before guest arrival, they found nothing but a professional chef orchestrating a complex meal preparation with military efficiency. "Chef, we need to inspect all food items before they go to the dining room," one of the security officers informed her. Sofia nodded without looking up from the delicate sugar structure she was assembling. "My sous chef will coordinate with you. Nothing leaves this kitchen without final inspection." The formal dinner began at 8, with 6 courses served over 3 hours to Blackwood and his 6 guests, all high-ranking intelligence officers from foreign services, all present under the cover of diplomatic or business credentials. From the kitchen, Sofia orchestrated the service while monitoring conversations through the surveillance devices now strategically placed throughout the dining area. "The first course is a deconstructed bouillabaisse," she announced as her team presented the opening dishes: saffron foam, compressed fennel, and sea essence spheres with crispy leeks. As the guests exclaimed over the presentation, Sofia caught fragments of their conversation through her concealed earpiece. Complete operational files. Active assets in 16 countries. Bidding starts at 15 million. She maintained her focus on the culinary execution, while absorbing every detail of the intelligence auction taking place under the guise of a dinner party. Between courses, she moved between kitchen and pantry, using the legitimate need to retrieve specialized ingredients as cover to place additional surveillance devices in new locations. During the 4th course, a nitrogen-frozen palate cleanser that required tableside preparation, Sofia entered the dining room herself, pushing a cart of equipment. The theatrical presentation provided the perfect opportunity to visually identify each of Blackwood's guests while placing the final and most crucial surveillance device beneath the dining table. "What we have here," she explained with professional charisma as she worked, "is a deconstruction of classic citrus flavors, flash frozen at -320 degrees Fahrenheit. The instantaneous freezing creates microcrystals that deliver an intensity of flavor impossible through conventional methods." As she poured liquid nitrogen into a specialized container, creating dramatic clouds of vapor that captured everyone's attention, Sofia identified each guest by face and positioning, matching them to the intelligence briefing she'd memorized. Russian intelligence, Chinese Ministry of State Security, Iranian Operations Director, North Korean Technology Acquisition Specialist. 2 others representing private interests with connections to global terror networks. Blackwood watched her performance with appreciation that wasn't entirely culinary. "Chef Mitchell's techniques remind us that appearances can be deceiving," he commented to his guests. "What seems like mere theatrical presentation conceals revolutionary methods beneath." The double meaning wasn't lost on Sofia. As she completed the tableside service and returned to the kitchen, she felt Sullivan's eyes following her, more intense than before, as though something about her had triggered a subconscious recognition. Back in the kitchen, Sofia received an alert through her concealed earpiece. The surveillance devices were transmitting successfully, and Hayes' team was receiving everything. The operation was proceeding exactly as planned. She would complete the dinner service, leave with her team, and be extracted at the predetermined location. That everything changed. As Sofia was preparing the fifth course, a complex meat dish featuring 3 different cooking techniques, Sullivan entered the kitchen alone. He dismissed her assistants with a curt order, claiming a security matter needed discussion. When they were alone, he circled the kitchen island where she worked, watching her hands as she assembled the intricate dish. "You know," he said conversationally, "I once knew a chef with knife skills like yours, military trained. Could brunoise an onion faster than anyone I'd ever seen." Sofia continued working, maintaining her focus on the delicate plating. The military culinary program produces excellent technicians. Precision becomes second nature. Sullivan moved closer, picking up one of her personal knives, the Suntoku she'd brought from Vermont. "This is well used. Perfectly maintained, but not new. You've had it a long time." "A good chef cares for their tools," Sofia replied, gently, reclaiming the knife. "This one has been with me for many years." Sullivan leaned against the counter, his posture casual but his eyes sharp. "It's strange. When I watched you doing that molecular gastronomy show in the dining room, something seemed familiar. The way you move, the way you talk when explaining complex techniques." He tilted his head slightly. "Almost like someone I used to know." Sofia felt her pulse quicken, but kept her hand steady as she applied a perfect dot of sauce to each plate. "I have one of those faces, I suppose. People often think they've met me before." "No," Sullivan said, his voice hardening. "It's not your face. It's something else. Something more fundamental." He moved to block her path to the door. "Why don't we take a moment to discuss your background more thoroughly, Chef Mitchell? Or should I call you something else?" Sofia set down her piping bag and turned to face him fully, weighing her options. Her cover was compromised, or at least severely threatened. Sullivan's posture indicated he wouldn't let her leave without answers. The dinner service couldn't be interrupted without raising alarms. And somewhere in the... "An excellent idea," Blackwood agreed, nodding to Sullivan, who ushered the confused culinary assistants out of the kitchen with firm instructions not to return. When the door closed behind them, leaving Sofia alone with Blackwood and Sullivan, the pretense evaporated entirely. "Now then," Blackwood said, his genial host persona replaced by the calculating intelligence officer she remembered. "Let's dispense with the charade, shall we? Who sent you, CIA? The Pentagon's new special activities group? Or perhaps you've gone private, selling your services to the highest bidder, as I have." Sofia held the tactical knife loosely, considering her options. The surveillance operation was complete. Hayes had all the intelligence needed to expose Blackwood's treason. Her extraction had been compromised, but the mission itself could still be considered successful if she escaped with the intelligence she'd gathered. "You're selling out your country," she said, dropping the chef persona. "Entirely. Worse, you're selling out your people, operatives who trusted you with their lives." Sullivan's eyes widened at the shift in her demeanor and speech pattern. "It is you," he breathed. "Persephone, but that's impossible. You died in Karachi. I saw the building collapse." "Clearly your intelligence was flawed," Sofia replied, never taking her eyes off Blackwood. "Much like your loyalty." Blackwood seemed more amused than concerned by the revelation. "Well, this is an unexpected pleasure, Sofia Nicolaides, risen from the dead. I must say, your cover was impeccable. The bakery in Vermont, the legitimate culinary career. Even your knife skills served both identities perfectly. He circled the kitchen island, maintaining a careful distance. The question is, what do we do with you now? Sullivan has been quite efficient in eliminating your former colleagues. 7 down, and now one of the final 3 delivers herself directly to us. Those were assassinations, not operations, Sofia said, her voice hard. You're not just a traitor, you're a murderer. I prefer to think of it as tying up loose ends, Blackwood replied. Artemis was being shut down anyway. Budget cuts, changing priorities. I simply found a more lucrative application for all that classified intelligence. The only complication was ensuring no one remained who could identify the source of the leaks. So you sent us to Karachi to die, Sofia concluded. A fake extraction that was actually an ambush. Sullivan at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. The targets were specific, you weren't on the elimination list. The revelation hit Sofia like a physical blow, but Martinez was. And Chun. And Williams. Her former teammates who hadn't survived Karachi. You set us up so you could eliminate the ones asking too many questions, and the rest of us were just collateral damage? Unfortunate but necessary, Blackwood said dismissively. The intelligence business has always required sacrifices. Surely you understand that, Persephone. Sofia's grip on the tactical knife tightened imperceptibly. What I understand is that you've spent 8 years hunting down and killing loyal Americans to cover your treason. And tonight, you just sold Operation Hestia to 6 foreign intelligence services. A flicker of surprise crossed Blackwood's face. He hadn't expected her to know the specific operation he'd been auctioning. Very good. Your surveillance techniques have improved since Karachi. But it doesn't matter. The transfers are complete. The buyer's satisfied. And now we have one more loose end to tie up. He nodded to Sullivan, who drew his sidearm and aimed it at Sofia with practiced efficiency. Nothing personal, Persephone. For what it's worth, you were the best operative Artemis ever produced. Sofia stood perfectly still, the tactical knife held deceptively loose in her right hand. One question before you add another murder to your conscience, Michael. Was it worth it? Betraying everything you swore to protect? Sullivan's expression hardened. You have no idea what happened after Karachi. The agency hung us out to dry. Blackwood was the only one who offered a way out. There's always another way, Sofia replied. I found one. I built something real, something good. And yet here you are, Blackwood observed. Back in the game, taking orders, risking your life for handlers who see you as expendable. Did you really escape anything, Sofia? The question struck closer to home than Sofia wanted to admit. Had she truly built a new life, or just a temporary shelter from her real identity? Was Sofia Mitchell just another cover, as disposable as any operational alias? No. The bakery was real. The community she'd built was real. The skills she'd developed and the joy she found in creation, rather than destruction, those were genuine parts of who she had become. I'm not taking orders, she said, a new resolve hardening her voice. I'm making a choice. To protect the innocent people you've put in danger. To stop you from selling out more operatives who trusted you. Sullivan's finger tensed on the trigger. Enough talking. I'm sorry it came to this, Persephone. What happened next occurred with the fluid precision that had once made Sofia Nicolaides the Artemis program's most lethal asset. The tactical knife left her hand in a perfect arc, striking Sullivan's forearm with its pommel rather than its blade, a disabling rather than lethal strike. As he involuntarily dropped his weapon, Sofia was already in motion, vaulting the kitchen island and executing a precision strike to his solar plexus. Sullivan staggered back, gasping for breath, as Blackwood lunged for the fallen sidearm. Sofia kicked it across the polished floor, sending it spinning under the commercial refrigerator, then turned to face both men in a defensive stance. Stand down, she ordered with the command presence that had once led teams into high-risk extractions. "It's over, Blackwood. The surveillance is complete. Every word of your auction, every detail of your treason, has been transmitted to the Pentagon. Special Forces teams are probably surrounding this compound as we speak." Blackwood's composed demeanor finally cracked. "You're bluffing. My security systems would have detected any transmission signals. Would they detect ceramic components, designed to mimic organic material, or transmitters programmed to piggyback on your own security system's frequencies?" Sofia allowed herself a small, grim smile. "Artemis developed those technologies 3 years after you lost your clearance. You've been selling outdated intelligence, General." The kitchen door burst open, revealing 3 of Blackwood's security team, weapons drawn. Sofia assessed the tactical situation in an instant. 4 armed opponents, minimal cover, no clear exit route. The odds were not in her favor. Then the lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Sofia moved on instinct and training, dropping to the floor as the distinctive sound of stun grenades echoed from multiple points throughout the estate. The extraction team had arrived, not at the planned rendezvous point, but directly on site, responding to her emergency signal. The kitchen erupted into chaos as tactical teams breached the house from multiple entry points. Sofia rolled beneath the kitchen island, retrieving her chef's knife from where she'd concealed it earlier. Not as effective as a tactical weapon, but in her hands more than sufficient for self-defense. "Persephone, status?" Hayes' voice came through her concealed earpiece. "Kitchen, northeast corner," Sofia replied tersely. "Blackwood and Sullivan are here. 4 security personnel, armed. Hold position. Tactical team approaching your location." Sofia remained motionless in the darkness, listening to the systematic clearing of rooms throughout the estate. The training that had been dormant for 8 years had reactivated instantly. The ability to remain perfectly still, to control her breathing, to become effectively invisible even in confined spaces. A beam of light swept across the kitchen as someone entered, moving with the precise efficiency of special operations personnel. "Tango team, kitchen area," a voice reported quietly. "No visual on primary asset or targets." "Here," Sofia called softly, using the recognition code Hayes had established. "Chef's position, under island." The tactical operator swung his light toward her location, then quickly redirected it to avoid revealing her position. "Assets secured," he reported. "No sign of primary targets." Sofia emerged from her concealment, immediately scanning the kitchen. Blackwood and Sullivan had disappeared in the chaos of the breach, likely heading for one of the escape routes built into the estate's design. "They're running," she told the operator. "Blackwood has a secondary security office in the East Wing. Underground level. Panic room with separate communications and exit tunnel." The operator relayed this information while Sofia retrieved her knife roll, not just for the cover it provided, but because these tools had become a genuine part of her identity. Chef or operative, these knives served both aspects of who she was. "Hayes wants you extracted immediately," the operator informed her. "Primary mission objectives achieved. Intelligence secured." Sofia shook her head. "Blackwood and Sullivan are still in play. They know every Artemis operative, active or retired. As long as they're free, no one is safe." "Not our mission parameter," the operator replied. "Extraction is priority." Sofia made a decision then, not as Persephone following orders, but as Sofia Nicolaides taking responsibility for her former teammates, and as Sofia Mitchell protecting the life she'd built. "You extract," she said firmly. "I'm finishing this." Before the operator could respond, Sofia moved toward the service hallway that led to the East Wing. She knew this house from the architectural plans she'd memorized, but more importantly, she knew how Blackwood thought. In a crisis, he would head for the most secure position, with the best escape options, The panic room. The estate was in controlled chaos, tactical teams methodically clearing rooms while security personnel attempted to regroup. Sofia moved through the confusion like a ghost, using service corridors and staff passages to avoid the main confrontation points. Her chef's whites made her conspicuous in some ways, but also provided unexpected camouflage in the confusion. She could be mistaken for staff rather than a primary target. She reached the east wing as alarms continued to sound throughout the compound. The entrance to the underground level would be secured, especially in an emergency lockdown. Sofia bypassed the main access point, heading instead for what appeared to be a storage closet near the kitchen delivery area. If Blackwood followed standard security protocols, there would be a secondary access route for emergencies, and as Artemis director, he would have incorporated the program's design principles into his own security systems. The closet contained cleaning supplies and kitchen storage, and a false back panel that opened to reveal a narrow service stair. Sofia descended silently. Her chef's knife held reverse grip for close quarters defense. At the bottom of the stairs, a reinforced door with a biometric scanner protected the underground level. Sofia had no access to this system, but she did have knowledge of how Artemis security protocols worked. Blackwood, arrogant and convinced of his system's superiority, would have maintained the same override codes he'd used during program operations. She entered a 12-digit sequence on the keypad, the Artemis Master Override, changed monthly according to an algorithm she still remembered. The panel remained red for 3 agonizing seconds, then flashed green. The door unlocked with a pneumatic hiss. Beyond lay a short corridor leading to Blackwood's panic room, a fortified command center designed to withstand virtually any assault. If he had reached this room, he would already be activating the escape tunnel and destroying evidence. Sofia moved forward cautiously, aware that the final approach would likely be monitored. Sure enough, a security camera tracked her movement, its small red light indicating active surveillance. She made no attempt to hide or disguise her approach. Surprise was no longer an option, but neither was retreat. The panic room door was ajar, an immediate tactical warning sign. Either Blackwood had been forced to leave in extreme haste, or this was a deliberate trap. "I know you're coming, Persephone." Blackwood's voice echoed from an intercom beside the door. "Sullivan thought you'd go for extraction. I knew better. You always complete the mission." Sofia approached the doorway, staying to one side to minimize her profile as a target. "It's over, General. The intelligence has been secured. Your buyers have been identified. There's nowhere left to run." "There's always somewhere to run," Blackwood replied. "That's the first rule of intelligence work. Never leave yourself without an exit strategy." Sofia risked a glance around the doorframe. The panic room beyond was a sophisticated command center, multiple monitors showing security feeds from throughout the estate, communications equipment, weapons locker, and a reinforced door that presumably led to the escape tunnel. Blackwood stood at the central console, Sullivan beside him, both men armed. "Your tactical team missed the secondary armory," Blackwood observed, gesturing with his sidearm. "Amateur mistake. Now come in slowly, hands where we can see them. You've led us on quite a chase, but it ends here." Sofia remained partially concealed by the doorframe, assessing options. The panic room had been designed to be defensible. Limited angles of approach, clear fields of fire. No cover between the door and the main console where Blackwood and Sullivan waited. A frontal entry would be suicide. "You know what always impressed me about you, Persephone?" Blackwood continued when she didn't immediately comply. "Your adaptability. Military chef to covert operative to small-town baker. You rebuilt yourself completely each time. That takes extraordinary discipline. Learned from watching you." Sofia replied, playing for time while she formulated a plan. "You were a patriot once. Someone we all respected." "What happened, General?" Blackwood's expression hardened. "What happened? Reality happened." 27 years of service, building programs like Artemis from nothing, sacrificing everything for the mission. And what did it get me? Forced retirement. A pat on the back and half the pension I was promised due to budget adjustments. So you sold out your country for money, Sofia said, her contempt evident. Betrayed your operatives, your oath, everything you claimed to stand for. I sold skills and intelligence that were no longer valued, Blackwood corrected, to clients who appreciate their worth. Business, not treason. Tell that to the 7 Artemis operatives you had executed, Sofia replied. I doubt they'd appreciate the distinction. Sullivan shifted uncomfortably, his weapon still trained on the doorway. This is pointless, Persephone. Your extraction team is engaged with my security forces. No one knows you came down here. Walk away now, and maybe you get to live another day. Sofia studied Sullivan's face, the man who had once been her teammate, who had fought alongside her in operations across 3 continents. There was doubt in his eyes now, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. Is that what he told you about Karachi, Michael? She asked, addressing him directly. That it was just business? That sacrificing your teammates was justified because the program was being shut down anyway? Sullivan's weapon lowered fractionally. You don't understand the position we were in. I understand loyalty, Sofia replied, and betrayal. I understand that we swore an oath to protect each other and our country. Not sell out to the highest bidder when retirement benefits didn't meet expectations. Blackwood's expression darkened. Enough talking. Sullivan, secure the asset or eliminate her. We have an extraction window closing. Sullivan hesitated, conflict evident in his posture. In that moment of uncertainty, Sofia made her move, not toward them, but toward the environmental controls on the wall beside the door. A panic room this sophisticated would have independent systems, including. She slammed her palm against the fire suppression override. Instantly, the room's lights switched to emergency red as the halon system activated. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed, creating momentary disorientation. In the chaos, Sofia moved with purpose, not attacking, but circling toward the weapons locker that stood open against the far wall. Blackwood fired twice, the shots going wide as the emergency lighting and his own haste threw off his aim. Sullivan turned to track her movement, but hesitated again, the fractional delay of someone firing on a former teammate. Sofia reached the weapons locker and grabbed not a gun, but a tactical stun grenade. In one fluid motion, she armed it and threw it toward the center console where the 2 men stood. Both ducked instinctively, giving her the opening she needed to cross to the secondary console that controlled the room's security systems. The grenade detonated with a blinding flash and concussive force designed to disorient rather than kill. Sofia, having shielded her eyes, recovered first. Her fingers flew across the security console, activating protocol she knew would be built into any panic room designed by Artemis standards. External system override initiated. An automated voice announced. Facility lockdown engaged. No. Blackwood lunged for the main console, still half blinded from the stun grenade. Security override Blackwood 7-7 Alpha. Override rejected, the system responded. Secondary authentication required. Sofia allowed herself a grim smile. I changed your authorization codes, General. Another Artemis protocol. Always secure your systems against insider threats. Sullivan had recovered enough to raise his weapon again, but the dynamic had shifted. The escape tunnel door had sealed automatically with the lockdown, and the communication system was now broadcasting an automated distress signal that would lead Hayes' team directly to their location. It's over, Michael, Sofia said, addressing Sullivan rather than Blackwood. You have about 2 minutes before this room is breached by a tactical team. Your choice now is whether you go out in handcuffs or a body bag. Sullivan's weapon remained pointed at her, but doubt had become the dominant expression on his face. "There's no coming back from this," he said quietly. "Too many bodies, too many compromised operations." "There's always a way back," Sofia countered. "Testimony against Blackwood, intelligence about his buyers, the names of everyone involved in the Artemis assassinations. It doesn't erase what happened, but it's a start." Blackwood, seeing his advantage slipping away, made a desperate move, lunging not for Sofia but for a secondary weapon concealed beneath the console. "No deals," he snarled. "No surrender." What happened next unfolded in fractions of seconds. Sullivan, seeing Blackwood reach for the hidden weapon, made his choice. He pivoted and fired twice, precise shots that struck Blackwood in the shoulder and chest. The general collapsed against the console, his hidden weapon clattering unfired to the floor. Sullivan immediately dropped his own weapon and raised his hands, turning to face Sofia. "Your move, Persephone." Before she could respond, the panic. Room's outer door echoed with the sound of breaching charges being set. Hayes' team had arrived. "Get on your knees, hands behind your head," Sofia ordered, retrieving Sullivan's discarded weapon and training it on him. To his credit, he complied without hesitation, assuming the position of surrender as the door blew inward and tactical operators flooded the room. Hayes entered last, surveying the scene with professional detachment, Blackwood bleeding but alive on the floor, Sullivan kneeling in surrender, and Sofia standing with weapon in hand, still wearing her chef's whites now stained with blood and soot. "Asset secured," the team leader reported. "2 targets contained. 1 wounded, requires medical." Hayes nodded, then looked at Sofia with a raised eyebrow. "I believe your extraction instructions were quite clear, Persephone." Sofia lowered the weapon, suddenly feeling the adrenaline crash as the immediate danger passed. "I adapted to changing circumstances." Artemis Protocol 37. "Complete the mission regardless of extraction parameters," Hayes quoted, her expression somewhere between exasperation and approval. Some habits die hard, it seems. As the tactical team secured Blackwood and Sullivan, treating the general's wounds while binding both men for transport, Sofia felt the weight of the past 8 years and the past 8 hours settling onto her shoulders. Chef Sofia Mitchell had walked into this estate to cater a dinner. Operative Sofia Nicolaides would be walking out. What happens now? She asked Hayes as they watched the prisoners being escorted from the panic room. "Debriefing. Evidence processing. Blackwood's intelligence buyers are already being tracked. The surveillance you planted captured everything: names, accounts, operational details. It's the biggest counterintelligence coup in a decade." "I meant what happens to me," Sofia clarified. "To my life in Meadowvale." Hayes' expression softened slightly. "That depends on you. Your cover is intact, as far as anyone knows, Chef." Sofia Mitchell was hired for a private event and got caught up in a federal operation. "You can return to your bakery, your life." "But," Sofia prompted, hearing the unspoken qualification. "But Blackwood's intelligence sale can't be completely contained. Some of what he sold will leak. Some Artemis operatives, current and former, will need protection. New identities, new locations." The implication was clear. Her quiet life in Vermont might no longer be secure, regardless of her wishes. "I built something real there," Sofia said quietly. "Something that matters." Hayes nodded. "I know. And we'll do everything possible to preserve that. But I can't promise it will be enough." 3 days later, Sofia stood in a Pentagon briefing room, watching as Director Phillips presented the results of Operation Kitchen Knife to a select group of intelligence officials. The evidence she had gathered had led to the arrest of 4 of Blackwood's 6 buyers and the recovery of approximately 60% of the intelligence he had sold. More importantly, the Artemis files had been secured before they could be fully disseminated, protecting the remaining operatives from exposure. The operation was an unqualified success, Phillips concluded. "General Blackwood is in custody. facing multiple charges of espionage and murder. Commander Sullivan has agreed to full cooperation in exchange for consideration in sentencing. The Cerberus kill team has been identified, and its members are being tracked worldwide. He gestured to Sofia, who stood at the back of the room in civilian clothes, her chef's whites left behind at Blackwood's estate. We owe this success to the extraordinary actions of one operative, who emerged from deep cover to prevent a catastrophic intelligence breach. The officials turned to look at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to admiration. These were people who understood the true significance of what she had accomplished and the sacrifice it represented. After the briefing concluded, Phillips approached her privately. "The Attorney General has approved your immunity agreement. Your testimony against Blackwood will be taken in closed session, your identity protected in all public records." Sofia nodded, grateful for the consideration, but aware of the larger question still hanging between them. "And my return to Meadowvale?" Phillips sighed, his expression grave. "That's more complicated. Sullivan's cooperation has been invaluable, but he's confirmed our worst fears. Blackwood sold information about all Artemis operatives, including your location. He didn't know your new identity, but he provided enough geographic data that, given time, his buyers could narrow it down. So I can't go back," Sofia concluded, feeling the weight of loss settling over her. The bakery she'd built from nothing, the community she'd cautiously become part of, the life she'd created for herself, all of it now compromised. "Not immediately," Phillips admitted. "But we're not abandoning you or the life you built. We've established a security presence in Meadowvale, undercover, integrated into the community. The bakery remains open, managed by your assistant with the story that you're on an extended consulting job." "For how long?" Sofia asked. "Until we've neutralized all known threats from Blackwood's operation. 3 months, minimum. Possibly 6. 6 months away from the life she'd spent 8 years building. 6 months in which anything could happen. Her customers finding new bakeries, her recipes losing their special place in the community's routines, her careful integration into small-town life unraveling in her absence. I want updates, she said firmly. Weekly reports on the bakery, on the town. And I want input on how it's being managed. Phillips nodded. Already arranged. Your assistant manager receives your instructions as though you're consulting remotely. Your recipes are being followed precisely. As far as Meadowvale knows, Sofia Mitchell is on a prestigious assignment that will bring even more recognition to her bakery when she returns. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. A thread connecting her to the life she'd built, a promise that not everything had been lost when her past resurfaced. What do I do in the meantime? She asked. That's up to you, Phillips replied. We can provide a temporary placement anywhere in the country. Safe house, new short-term identity, whatever you need. Sofia considered her options. For 8 years, she had focused on building something permanent, something that belonged only to her. Now, temporarily displaced from that life, she faced a choice: wait passively for clearance to return, or use this unexpected detour to grow in new directions. I want to help protect the remaining Artemis operatives, she decided. Not field work, but consultation, security assessment, cover strengthening, identity verification. No one knows the program's vulnerabilities better than I do. Phillips studied her with newfound respect. That's not what I expected. Most operatives in your position would opt for maximum distance from the program that compromised their cover. I'm not running anymore, Sofia said with quiet determination. For 8 years, I've been hiding from what happened in Karachi, from who I was. Maybe it's time to integrate both sides of myself, the baker and the operative, the creator and the protector. 2 weeks later, Sofia found herself in a secure facility outside Washington, D.C., reviewing the files of former Artemis operatives who needed enhanced protection in the wake of Blackwood's intelligence sale. The work was challenging but fulfilling, using her unique perspective to identify vulnerabilities others might miss, strengthening covers that had grown thin over time, ensuring that people like her could maintain the lives they'd built for themselves. In the evenings, she baked. The facility's kitchen wasn't equipped to her standards, but she'd arranged for the installation of key equipment: a professional-grade oven, proper mixers, the specialized tools that had become extensions of her hands over the years. While her days were spent protecting identities, her nights were dedicated to maintaining the skills that had become core to her own. She was preparing an experimental sourdough, testing how different hydration levels affected crust development, when Hayes found her, dusted with flour and completely absorbed in her work. You know, most people would take the opportunity to try something new during forced sabbatical, Hayes observed, leaning against the doorframe. Travel, hobbies, relaxation. Sofia looked up from the dough she was kneading. This is relaxation for me, and it keeps my skills sharp for when I return to Meadowvale. Hayes entered the kitchen, examining the various experiments in progress: proofing loaves, starter cultures, notes on fermentation times and temperatures. You've turned a government facility kitchen into a bakery research lab. Integration of identities, Sofia replied with a small smile. Persephone's precision and Sofia's creativity, working together instead of separately. Hayes nodded thoughtfully, then produced a tablet from her jacket. I have something you might want to see. The screen displayed a news article from the Meadowvale local paper, featuring a photograph of Sofia's bakery. The headline read, "Local Bakery Wins Regional Award, Despite Owner's Absence." Sofia quickly scanned the article, emotion tightening her throat. Her assistant manager had entered her signature sourdough in a prestigious New England baking competition and won first place, crediting Sofia's recipes and training for the achievement. Your bakery has become something of a local celebrity. In your absence, Hayes noted, business is up 30%. Your assistant had to hire 2 more staff to keep up with demand. Sofia felt a complex mixture of pride, gratitude, and longing. The bakery was thriving without her physical presence, because she had built something solid enough to stand on its own, had trained people who believed in her vision, had created recipes that spoke for themselves. There's more, Hayes said, swiping to another screen, this one showing security footage from the bakery. The shop was bustling with customers, many of whom Sofia recognized. Mrs. Hargrove from the library, the high school cross-country coach, Sheriff Daniels and his deputies, making their regular morning stop. The community hasn't forgotten you, Hayes said quietly. They're keeping your place warm until you return. Sofia set down the dough. She'd been kneading, suddenly finding it difficult to focus through the emotion welling up. For so long, she had feared that her dual identity made genuine connection impossible, that being Persephone meant she could never truly be Sofia Mitchell, that her past would always threaten her present. But here was evidence that the life she'd built had roots deep enough to weather her absence, that the connections she'd formed were resilient rather than fragile. Thank you for showing me this, she said when she could trust her voice again. Hayes nodded, then hesitated before delivering her other news. Sullivan's cooperation has accelerated our timeline. We've identified and neutralized 3 of the 4 remaining members of the Cerberus team. The final operative is believed to have abandoned the mission after Blackwood's arrest. Meaning? Sofia prompted, already anticipating the answer, but needing to hear it confirmed. Meaning the threat assessment for Meadowvale has been downgraded. Not eliminated entirely, but reduced significantly. Enough that we're reevaluating the timeline for your return. Hope sparked in Sofia's chest. How soon? 4 weeks, possibly sooner. We'll maintain a security presence in the area, but discreetly. As far as anyone will know, Sofia Mitchell is simply returning from a successful consulting engagement. 4 weeks. After believing she might be separated from her bakery for half a year or more, the shortened timeline felt like a gift. Not just a return to her former life, but a return with new perspective, a fuller integration of her complete self. "I want to do something before I go back," Sofia said, a plan forming as she spoke. "For the other Artemis operatives. The ones who lost their covers or are still at risk." "What did you have in mind?" Hayes asked. "A network. Unofficial, off the books. Former Artemis personnel supporting each other. Security consultation, identity verification, emergency extraction. If needed. The kind of safety net we should have had 8 years ago." Hayes considered the proposal. Blackwood's betrayal exposed a significant vulnerability. With the program officially disbanded, there's no formal protection mechanism for former operatives. "Exactly," Sofia said. "We protect our own, because no one else will. Not through official channels, anyway." "You're talking about a major commitment," Hayes pointed out. "One that would require ongoing involvement with the world you left behind." Sofia looked down at her flour-covered hands, then at the bread. Experiments surrounding her. "I'm not leaving anything behind anymore. I'm bringing it all forward, the operative and the baker, the protector and the creator. Not compartmentalized, but integrated." 3 weeks later, Sofia stood before a nondescript building in a quiet corner of Washington, D.C. The former insurance office had been converted into what appeared to be a small specialty bakery, Persephone's Provisions, according to the discreet sign above the door. Inside, beneath the legitimate bakery operation on the main floor, was a secure facility staffed by former Artemis personnel, a headquarters for the unofficial support network she had proposed. Commander David Chun, recently extracted from his deep cover assignment in Southeast Asia, stood beside her, surveying what would become his new operational base. "A bakery as cover for a covert security operation," he observed with wry amusement. "Hiding in plain sight by embracing, rather, than denying our past. It's either brilliant or completely insane. Why not both?" Sofia replied with a smile. "The best covers are always rooted in truth." Inside, Lieutenant James Farrow was already setting up the secure communication system that would connect former operatives worldwide. Like Sofia, both men had built new lives after Artemis, Chun as an import-export consultant, Farrow as a private security specialist. Both had seen those lives threatened by Blackwood's betrayal. Both had recognized the need for the network Sofia proposed. "We start small," Sofia explained as they toured the facility. "Identity verification protocols, secure communication channels, emergency extraction capabilities. As we locate more former operatives, we expand the network. Everyone contributes. According to their skills, everyone benefits from collective protection." "And you?" Chun asked. "Will you run this operation from Vermont?" Sofia shook her head. "I'll consult and coordinate, but my primary focus remains my bakery. This network isn't about returning to our former lives. It's about protecting the new ones we've built." The following week, Sofia stood before the familiar storefront of Wheatfield Bakery in Meadowvale, Vermont. After nearly 2 months away, the sight of her own creation brought a surge of emotion she didn't try to suppress. The early morning light cast a golden glow over the building's Victorian architecture, and through the windows she could see her assistant manager already preparing for the day's first customers. She took a deep breath, savoring the familiar sense of her town, pine from the surrounding forests, the crisp clarity of mountain air, and beneath it all, the yeasty warmth of bread baking in her ovens. Then she unlocked the door and stepped inside, returning to the life she had built. "Sofia!" her assistant exclaimed, flour-covered hands freezing mid-task. "You're back early. We weren't expecting you until next week." "The consulting project wrapped up ahead of schedule," Sofia replied with the cover story that had been prepared. "And I couldn't stay away any longer. I saw the article about the regional competition. Congratulations." Her assistant beamed. "With pride. I used your techniques exactly as you taught me." The judges said they'd never tasted sourdough with such complex flavor development. Sofia hung her coat on the familiar hook by the door and reached for an apron. Not the crisp chef's whites she had worn at Blackwood's estate, but the comfortable flour-dusted apron that had become part of her daily identity in Meadowvale. "Well, let's see if I remember how to do this," she said with a smile, washing her hands at the sink where she had washed them thousands of times before. As she moved through her kitchen, her true domain, the place she had created from nothing. But skill and determination, Sofia felt the final pieces of herself clicking into place. The precision of Persephone now enhanced rather than contradicted the creativity of Sofia Mitchell. The operational awareness that had kept her alive through countless missions now seamlessly integrated with the community connection that made her bakery special. She wasn't two separate people anymore, the operative hiding beneath the baker's disguise. She was one complete person, with a complex past and a purposeful present. The morning unfolded with comfortable familiarity. Regular customers welcomed her back with genuine warmth. Mrs. Hargrove from the library brought a welcome home card signed by dozens of townspeople. Sheriff Daniels made a point of telling her how much they'd missed her sourdough, though her assistant had done an admirable job in her absence. By noon, the bakery was bustling with activity, locals coming in not just for bread and pastries, but specifically to welcome Sofia home. She moved among them with easy confidence, the hypervigilance of her operative years now softened into a general awareness that enhanced rather than inhibited her connections. During a brief lull, Sofia stepped into the back office to check messages. Among the usual business correspondence was a secure communication from Hayes, a simple status update on Blackwood's case, proceeding to close testimony. Sullivan's cooperation, continuing and productive, and the security assessment for Meadowvale, downgraded to minimal concern. At the end was a personal note, network established. 6 former operatives contacted and secured. Chun says the croissants need work. Sofia smiled at the message, then deleted it according to security protocols. The network was functioning as designed, protecting former Artemis personnel while allowing them to maintain their new lives. Her contribution would continue from Vermont, providing both cover and purpose through the bakery that connected her dual identities. That evening, after closing, Sofia descended to the converted root cellar beneath her bakery. The space had been secured by Hayes' team during her absence, the surveillance equipment upgraded, the communication systems enhanced. What had once been merely a hiding place for her past now served as a connection point to both aspects of her life. Baker above, operative below, the two no longer in conflict. She opened the trunk containing her old uniform, running her fingers across the material that had once represented her entire identity. Then, beside it, she placed her flour-dusted apron from the day's work, the symbol of the life she had built for herself. 2 uniforms, 2 identities, now finally integrated into one complete person. Sofia Mitchell, baker and former operative, closed the trunk and ascended the stairs back to her bakery. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Bread to bake, community to serve, and occasionally, former colleagues to protect. But for the first time since Karachi, she would face those challenges as her complete self, not running from her past, but incorporating it into the future she continued to create, one perfectly crafted loaf at a time. As dawn broke over Meadowvale, the next morning, Sofia stood at her workbench, hands deep in sourdough starter, feeling the living culture respond to her touch. Through the front windows of her bakery, she watched her town awakening, shopkeepers raising blinds, early morning joggers passing by, the familiar rhythm of small-town life resuming as it had for generations before her arrival and would continue long after. She had chosen this place, this life, this identity. And now, tested by fire and stronger for the experience, she had proven that Sofia Mitchell was no mere cover story. She was a true expression of the person Sofia Nicolaides had always been capable of becoming. Not defined by her skills or her past, but by the choices she made each day to create rather than destroy, to protect rather than harm, to build something meaningful that nourished others. The small-town baker had indeed been hiding a military secret. But the greater secret, the one worth protecting, was that both identities were equally valid, equally true aspects of the remarkable woman who stood in the golden morning light, covered in flour, shaping dough with hands that could both create and defend with exceptional precision. The Pentagon might call her Persephone when they needed her specialized skills. Meadowvale would always know her as Sofia, the baker who made the best sourdough in 3 counties. But in the quiet moments between, she knew herself simply as someone who had found her way home, to a place that existed not on any map, but in the perfect integration of everything she had been and everything she had become. And that was a secret worth keeping. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.